Welcome back, everyone. Well, here's a little factoid for you. The 21st Congressional District is the largest in New York State and the second largest on the East Coast. And it runs from Saratoga all the way up in throughout the Adirondack Park. Many different lifestyles, very diverse congressional district. And joining me today is our Congresswoman, Elise Stefanik. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Jesse.
It's always great to have you here. Thanks for taking the time to come in. It's a big district. How do you cover this district?
You cover it by putting a lot of miles on my car. When I was first running for Congress, I put over 100,000 miles traveling the district, and I've been able to keep up pace getting around to the 12 counties and the towns and villages that I represent. And it is a very diverse district. You have Canadian border issues. You have issues related to the economy in Saratoga, of course, with the track and the tourism here. And then you have the Adirondacks, as well as a military base on the western side of the district at Fort Drum.
You know, I remember when you were running the first time, you really did cover the county, the district. It was really quite impressive. That's a lot to take in. That's a lot to learn, right?
It is a lot to learn. I'm really excited that after 2 years, I've been able to be accessible, transparent. I have a mobile district office, so that was a creative solution. In addition to brick and mortar headquarters, we launched a mobile district office to service some of the more rural parts of the district that I represent. And that has been a real success, being able to hear from seniors and from people who otherwise wouldn't have been able to travel the hour plus to our offices.
You know, it's funny, we've been following that mobile unit around. That was a very good move. I thought that was a very good move. Hey, they always say about if you're in Congress that you're always running, that because it's a 2-year term that you have to constantly keep running. But you learned a lot, I'm sure, in these first 2 years. And in following your website, I know there's some key issues that you're very passionate about, you're very concerned about. Let's start with job creation. You grew up in a small business. I grew up in a small business. Look Media is a small business. Many people feel that's the heartbeat of a community.
It absolutely is the heartbeat of our communities. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy, not just in upstate New York, but nationally. The majority of jobs in this country are created by small businesses. So I've fought for policies that support our small businesses, that support our entrepreneurs, and that will encourage our next generation of entrepreneurs. One issue that I hear from small businesses about frequently is taxes in New York State combined with federal taxes. It's incredibly difficult to continue to grow businesses in New York State, and our upstate small businesses know that. In addition, regulations, whether they're coming from federal agencies or state agencies, the regulatory burdens facing small businesses are significant. And healthcare costs. You know, one of the reasons that I ran for office 2 years ago is the increase in healthcare costs. After Obamacare, small businesses either got their healthcare plans canceled or they saw significant premium increases. We need to lower healthcare costs and improve quality. But particularly lately with the news regarding the increases of Obamacare health coverage, that's of concern to small businesses.
Sure. You know what? Let's stay on this one for a minute. When the Affordable Care Act was first passed, the thought there, of course, was that if you're healthy and you're contributing to the Care Act, the less fortunate then would be covered, and hence 20 extra million people are now covered. It's not working. You know, and I am a small business, and I feel that. A lot of people, then they say that it would be offset by subsidies. A lot of people just make enough money that it isn't covered by subsidies, and that hurts small business. What's the way out of something like that?
The way out is a new direction when it comes to our health care. Looking back, I think one of the biggest mistakes that was made with the Affordable Care Act is it was forced through by a party line vote. When you're dealing with 20% of our domestic economy, the next administration, I hope, shows leadership and reaches across the aisle to truly get a bipartisan approach to health care reform. In the interim, I've supported fixes to the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare. The biggest fix actually was the repeal of the auto-enrollment mandate, which was the requirement that you'd be automatically enrolled without your individual choice, if you were changing jobs, for instance. I authored the bill to repeal that, and that was signed into law by the president. I also helped repeal the medical device tax, which was having a negative impact on our manufacturers and therefore having an impact on our jobs. in this district because I represent so many medical device manufacturers. I think the future of healthcare is more patient-centered healthcare, giving the individual or the small business more choices that will help drive down costs. Purchasing healthcare across state lines, that could work very effectively here, given our proximity to Vermont, for example. Making sure that we have high-risk insurance pools for small businesses to pool together to get the best possible prices. And then I do think there are parts of the Affordable Care Act that we should keep, such as allowing young people to stay on their parents' healthcare plan up until the age of 26. That seems to be working. I think that's a good principle that should be kept in a replacement package. And making sure that we're covering preconditions is also important.
Sure. You know what? Two ways to look at that, of course. Dismantle it completely, work on it as it exists to make it better. Sounds to me like you see almost a combination. You almost have to repeal what we have, but learn from what was good about it, what was bad about it, in putting together a new proposal, new plan. Absolutely.
So I support repealing, but you have to replace it with common sense, bipartisan healthcare reforms.
Right.
In the interim, because the Affordable Care Act is the law today, I've supported fixes because we need to ensure that we're addressing the problems with it in the interim.
Got it. I want to move on to a couple of other issues. You and I both care very much what happens to our veterans. Recently, we interviewed Eddie Ryan, a Marine who was severely wounded overseas, and his parents. To this date, it was one of the best interviews I think I've ever done. The people were just so genuine and so nice. You know them. Mm-hmm. Talk to me, and you're very involved. Fort Drum is an issue. You know, I know that you're very involved with veterans. Give us an update on what you're doing.
Well, I represent the highest number of veterans out of any congressional district in New York State. So the number of VA cases that come across my desk are in the thousands. I've been able to claim over $1 million for veterans or caregivers or family members in this district of VA benefits, where had my office not gotten involved, there wouldn't have been a response from the VA. So we need to ensure that we have more accountability, and those benefits that are earned by our nation's heroes actually go back to the veteran themselves.
Right.
In the case of Eddie Ryan, I just saw him on Sunday. He is working with some tremendous physical therapists who have encouraged him, and he's made great strides. There's still significant more steps and I think growth opportunity for him. And we're going to continue working with the VA to take another look at his particular case. I'm in touch with his parents about that. This is a case that has been ongoing since before my time in Congress. My predecessor actually started this. But what was so great to see was the community really turned out in support of this hero, and at a small dinner we raised over $12,000. It was organized by the Warren County Sheriff, Bud York, and I was proud to go by and show my support.
You know, Bud called me after the interview. It's heartwarming to see how the community comes out in something like that. But you want to know something, there's so much at the federal level, really, when it comes to the VA. Red tape and all of these things, you know, if you're willing to jump in there and help, it really means something to these people. I know it does. Something that we face every day here, almost, and I hate to say it, but, you know, this whole heroin opioid epidemic. We talk to police officers, we talk to Bud York, we talk to a lot of people that are involved with it. Everybody's pretty stunned that it's become an epidemic. I know you care about that as well.
It absolutely has become an epidemic, and what is so frightening about this crisis is it knows no regional bounds. It is in rural communities, it is in urban centers, it knows no socioeconomic bounds. This impacts pretty much every family knows someone who has been impacted by the heroin and opioid abuse epidemic. In Congress, we actually passed a comprehensive bipartisan package to deal with prevention, treatment, increased funding to combat the heroin and opioid epidemic. A couple key points that are important to me is making sure that our law enforcement are a part of this process, because they're often the first line that sees these issues. Yeah. I've hosted roundtables with county sheriffs, with districts attorneys, to just hear about the staggering statistics and how much they've grown, particularly in this region, which is known as Heroin Highway, from New York to Vermont, for example, of the drug trafficking. Another concern that I have is when it comes to our healthcare providers, the prescribing of pain medication. In so many cases, when you hear of from former addicts, they've become addicted to opioids through a wisdom tooth operation, an injury that an athlete has faced in high school.
Sure.
Even my dad, he had an operation, actually, he had dental work as well, we were talking about this before, and gave him 30 days of pain medication, and that is not necessary. So actually having greater guidance to our physicians as they make those prescriptions.
You know, it's really helping. You're right about the police being first line on something like that. I remember that workshop you did. That was a very informative workshop. And give them the tools that they need in the field to help educate these kids. These kids are just so susceptible to something like this. And you're right about it being the highway. This is the run between New York City, Vermont, up to Montreal, to get up to Plattsburgh and all of that stuff. So they've definitely got their work cut out for them. You know, it's interesting, in talking to you, you mentioned the word bipartisan a lot. If you're my age, you think that this is the most chaotic national election that you never thought you'd see it here in the United States. Everybody is so entrenched in what they believe. Bipartisanship has to work in order for a democracy to work. What's your feeling about the national election and your feeling about being independent?
Well, what I'm proud of is when I was running for office, I made promises that I would be bipartisan and an independent voice for this district. And 2 years later, I'll be on the ballot in a week, and I've made good on those promises. I think the national election is showing that people are frustrated with the status quo. They're frustrated with that gridlock, and people are going to their traditional sides and not showing a willingness to compromise and reach across the aisle. In this district, I think what has been interesting is, again, the primary outcomes at the presidential. Donald Trump won this district, and Bernie Sanders won this district.
That's right.
Bernie won by 67%. So again, you have frustration with the status quo and the traditional types of candidates. I am running on my record, and that's why we're seeing such tremendous support, not just with Republicans, but with independents and Democrats. And what I'm very proud of is if you look at this past Congress, Congressional Quarterly does a review of who's the most independent member, who those members are. And I'm the 21st most independent member out of 435. That puts me in the top 5% of independent when it comes to my vote record. And I'm proud of that, and that's one of the one of my results that I'm running on.
Well, you know what? Please maintain that. Okay? Yeah. Should you be elected? I guess I'm supposed to say that as well. But yeah, please maintain that, because the system doesn't work unless there's bipartisanism, right?
And we see that at the local level. What's really interesting in this district, because I represent 12 counties, seeing the local work of boards of supervisors, of county legislators, of how our state elected officials work effectively across the aisle. I'm so proud to have over almost 600 local endorsements of Republicans, Democrats, Independents, of our local electeds, because they understand that's how you get things done.
Got it. Thank you very much for taking the time to come in. Congratulations.
Oh, thank
I see
you.
that you're engaged now. It's public now, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
thank
Okay.
you.
And best of luck to you. And again, thank you for taking the time to come in.
Thanks, Jesse.
You're welcome. To see this interview again, you can head to our website, looktvonline.com.